So we're going to start by looking at artificial intelligence in 2025, and then have a look at what I think is going to happen in 2026. And I'm going to make a few suggestions for what you can do to make sure you're thriving in this changed world. So the review, the predictions, and then some suggestions. Let's start with this review of the current year. The first thing we can see is that nearly every company is using artificial intelligence in our industry. Their movement has been from experiments to operationalizing AI. But when we look at how many employees in the companies are using it, it's typically about half. There is this quite big gap between sort of what the best is happening and the rest. Something else that's quite interesting is that qualitative research is adopting AI, generative AI, faster than quant. Now, I've been around a long time, and I was in when computers came in, to some extent when the telephone came in, certainly when the internet came in. And in all of those, quantitative research led the way. But because these are language models, they're opening up some very interesting possibilities. We're seeing qual leading the way, and now quant beginning to gather speed. There's been an absolute explosion of new companies, new options. Okay, let me deal with the rectangular box, which seems to be giving a problem somewhere. I'm going to stop that shit. Move. I've got an awful feeling it was my image that was on this. You wouldn't believe how many webinars I do, and they go well. Okay. Can somebody just tell me if...
Perfect. Oh, except there's a box at the top. No, that's it. You're all good. Good to go, Ray.
Super. Okay. So we've got this explosion of new options, new companies, new solutions. Massive numbers. Some of them from our history, so people branching out of old companies and making new ones, but lots and lots of them brand new. We're seeing this enormous rise of conversational research with platforms like HeroAra, like Yasna and others. We're seeing AI moderation coming through. We're seeing AI being embedded in core products. So we're seeing a lot of people using Coloop to do qualitative information analysis. We're seeing Displayer has got an AI option in it. My own company, ResearchWise, has got the Pulse tool. So all of these are leveraging AI, but in a much more controlled way than the LLMs. And we're seeing synthetic data coming out and establishing a clear presence. A wide range of people are using it, but a lot of people don't like it. And a lot of people like it, but they want more proof. So we've got quite a lot of contested stuff, but it's in use. Most of the major companies are using it quite a lot now. And what we're seeing as well is insights breaking out of the silo. We just saw a presentation from Michelle about breaking down the silos. But at companies like Heineken and Reckitt, we're seeing people like Tony Costello and Elaine Rodrigo championing the use of transformational AI throughout the organization, not focusing just on insights, but looking at marketing and communication and all of those, because actually a lot of researchers get AI better than most other people in the organization. The scale of the change is enormous. Something that I've noticed when I've been at more techie environments is most of the experts are saying, you know what, I've had to change my mind. I thought it wouldn't happen this fast. I didn't think we'd be able to do this within 5 years. It is much deeper and much more substantial than any of us had understood. AI understands text nuances much better than we anticipated. Yes, done right, when you're working with Claude and you've got the right context, it understands irony, it understands humor, it understands all sorts of cultural context. It captures human emotions and perspectives more authentically than we expected it to, particularly through synthetic personas. AI-generated content is increasingly indistinguishable from human output. There's been a lot of experimentation going on about what happens when you create synthetic personas to generate the output. It's pretty difficult to set it apart from human stuff. One of the ones that we were thinking about was artificial general intelligence. This was expected to be here soon by one or two experts. The vast majority were thinking 10, 15 years. Now, a lot of the really smart people think it's around the corner. I'm not one of those really smart people, and I'm not thinking it is just around the corner, but I now have to have the possibility in my mind that we might see something that is a quantum leap ahead of where we are now within 3 years. Persistent memory and connectivity mean that AI systems know far more about individual users than we expected. Think about the implications for marketing. So when you search for something on Google, you start getting ads for that. We've known that for a while. But this knows about much more of your feelings, your topics, your ideas. It's connected through to your email in many cases. This is going to create a really 360-degree picture of people and what is going on. So I'm going to give you a sneak peek of a study that's in the field at the moment. It's the 6th wave of what is the state of market research. We ran 2 waves in 23, 2 waves in 24, and the second wave is happening right now for 2025. And it's a very busy chart, but you only really need to look at the dark green lines. And what you can see is that we are less very optimistic and we are more pessimistic than we have been in any of the 6 waves so far. It's not a massive change. Let's look at that a little bit sharper. Here is looking at the net optimism. And I've left in a comment that I put in the June data. If this sample were a probability sample, which it's not, we'd be saying that June 25 is significantly lower. Now we can see we've got another wave of the data. It's coming out with very similar numbers. So we've got a lot of optimistic people. They're probably a majority of the people who fill in my surveys, but we're not as optimistic by any stretch of the imagination as we were in 23 or 24. We asked the people who did the study, what do you think are the most positive aspects about market research and insights? This wasn't about AI, remember. This was just a general question. The most positive thing, AI is accelerating productivity. Human insight remains the edge. Demand rebounded in 2025, though pockets remain soft. Rapid innovation and cross-ecosystem collaboration are reshaping the toolbox. A quality-first reset is underway, including debate about things like synthetic data. Research is more accessible and embedded across organizations, e.g. DIY. But if you think that all sounds really good, we also asked people what worried them. AI hype, blind adoption, and a race to the bottom. Data integrity crisis, fraud, bots, and synthetic shortcuts. So while some see it as a positive, some see it as a negative. Budget compression, in-housing, shrinking demand for classic MR. So if you're doing well in 25, you're optimistic, and if you're doing badly, you're pessimistic. Erosion of skills and the talent pipeline. And missing guardrails amid a wild west of tools and governance gaps. So we can see quite a contrast between what people think are going right and what people think are going wrong. And I agree with most of the things in the correct list, and I agree with most of the things in the worrying list too. We asked people what platforms they used, and not surprisingly, ChatGPT massively stronger than the rest. Evidently, about 70% of all chatbot sessions in the world are done with ChatGPT, and all the other systems between them are about 30%. This doesn't add up to 100% here because some people are using 2, 3, and 4 platforms. It's mostly what you'd expect, Copilot and Gemini, a second and third. Then comes Claude, pretty much the same number, Perplexity pretty strong. Notebook, I think, is shocking. I think it is the single most game-changing of all of them, and I really advocate you use it. Coloop makes it into this list, which is really impressive for Coloop. It's a qualitative analysis program. Then the Chinese DeepSeek, the somewhat dodgy Grok, and then 2 more programs that have got AI embedded in them, Displayer and Yasna. So it's quite interesting to see them ahead of things like Llama, for example, or Mistral, genuine LLM platforms, or Quem as well. So that's where we are this year. Let's look at where we can go next. We're going to see more innovations in AI. And we're going to see more power, more speed, more tools. We're going to see a lot more China in 2026. increases in the power and choices of local models. Local models are the ones you can download onto your computer or download onto your servers, so you don't have to share the data with the people who own them. We're going to see a lot of agentic innovations. They're going to standardize the processes. They're going to make the processes more robust. They will help break down the silos. We're going to see a lot more agentic browsers. We've got Perplexity Comet, we've got ChatGPT's Atlas browser, but they're going to see a lot more of them, and they are really quite scary. Even the people making them and selling them talk about the concerns, because they will take everything you've got open in the tabs and they can book you a holiday. They can spend money on your credit card if you get all your permissions not quite right. We're going to see very divergent regulation. The USA is going in one direction. China is going in a different direction. So if I take USA, it's basically opening up. If we take the EU, it's very much about citizens' rights and closing down. China is looking at making sure that the CCP, the Communist Party of China, has a very strict control, but massively enabling a capitalist expansionist growth at the same time. So it's in many ways a cross between some of the others. The UK is like a weak USA, I guess, in terms of its approach, but we're seeing different patterns in Australia, Japan, and Argentina. There is nothing like GDPR setting a pattern. They're all pulling in different directions. Very interesting to see that the EU has just rolled back some of its regulations because it's worried about things like tariffs, and it's backtracking on data protection in some of those areas. We're going to see economic uncertainty. The first reason, of course, is President Trump, but the second one is the AI bubble. There's a lot of smart money saying that it's going to go bust in a big way, that NVIDIA isn't really worth more than most of the countries in the world. And then, of course, we have the problem of conflicts, be that China, be that Russia, be that the Middle East. There's all sorts of potential. I think we're going to see the large language models, the Claudes, the Geminis, and all ChatGPTs, less relevant. We see at the moment about 50% of staff of companies are using them. They tend to make individuals more efficient, but they don't tend to make teams more efficient. We know about the hallucinations and other errors. I think we're going to see more and more of the co-loop of Gamma, for example. Canva has got some fantastic AI built into it now. We're going to see more conversational research, tools like Displayer. We're going to see agents built in the large language models and used instead of using the raw language model. These are more team focused. They're more workflow enhancing. They're more structured. I will carry on using the models. A lot of other people will carry on using the models. They're really flexible and really powerful. And that is probably the biggest two problems they have if you want to roll them out for everybody. We're going to see the amount of market research done massively increase, but we're going to see headcounts falling. Some of that you could see as an implication of the integration that we just saw from Shell. One of the things that Ipsos and Tony Costello from Heineken were highlighting at the SMR Congress recently is there are lots of decisions that are made in businesses today that are not based on data and evidence. And that's like the first place you want to be trying AI or synthetic data. Then we see low-cost, high-power solutions. And if you've not seen it, look up the solution that Pepsi and Zappi have put together, their ADA, which allows concept testing inside Pepsi by a really wide range of people for a really well-designed, high-quality, reproducible product. That's going to lower headcounts across the industry. Clients are going to be looking for cost savings from their suppliers because we're using AI. And of course, the largest cost in our industry is people. The biggest risk to our ecosystem is all those companies who are freezing the hiring of new people. Because where are tomorrow's managers going to come from if we're not hiring them now? Where will the next generation of leaders come from? We're going to see a lot of discussion about quality scale. So AI moderation and conversational research mean we can ask open-ended questions and discussions can be asked to hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of people. Well, I think we're going to see a bit of a challenge about what we do with that information. Will we just turn it into quantitative, the equivalent of doing coding? So we take all of that information and we turn it into codes, and then we can run quant on it. Or will we switch from closed questions, or those quantitative questions, to making everything more open-ended? Use the AI to process it qualitatively. So let's say you've got 1,000 people, do 1,000 pieces of qualitative information, and only then quantify the results, which could lead to much fewer quantitative studies and much more qualitative thinking, or, in all probability, some combination of one and two. I think we're going to see a change in the concern from field costs to compute costs. So a couple of things are going on at the moment. We're seeing much more use of secondary data. That is going to mean that fewer interviews are needed, and those interviews are going to be processed more often and more deeply. And we're seeing the growth of synthetic data. But intensive AI solutions are not cheap. Compute costs have been falling, but models are getting more powerful, and that actually makes them more expensive in terms of compute. So one of the things you may not be aware of is that AI is being sold below cost. They make all their money by a bit more investors coming in, more people buying into it. They're all pretty much trading at a massive loss because the prices don't make sense. But how long will that last? Once we need this AI, what's the betting the price will go up? New deliverables. So AI is becoming the new operating system. So we used to use Windows and the Mac operating system, and it shifted. So SaaS, software as a service, web-based things, Google, all the rest of it became very much the internet was our operating system. But now we're seeing AI be the operating system and the operating system for the research world. So deliverables are going to be built around AI, and they're going to be accessed around AI. They're going to be personalized to the individual person in the company. It's going to be natural language, as you just saw in that shell demonstration. That is absolutely the way that everybody will want to talk to data. And the data will provide rich outputs. It won't provide data coming back. I think we're going to see change fatigue. We're 3 years into the journey. Started in November 22. Only 50% of the employees in our companies are really in the journey. Most of the rest are probably 18 months into the ride. The rate of innovation and growth is going to increase, as I said. How many changes can your teams, your clients, and your suppliers take before they become fatigued by the change? This is going to be a real issue for how we look at things. So here are my top 10 words for 2026. Agentic. You're going to see this all over the place. Compute, which wasn't really a term that most of us use this way. We would ask you to compute the sum of. Now it's the raw power. This is why NVIDIA is now the most valued company in the world, because it's providing the GPUs that provide the compute. And the ability to get compute is going to make the difference between Gemini and ChatGPT and the other systems, and it's going to have implications for us. Orchestration. This is to do with how agents run agents. When you start using them, you just use them for one job, but increasingly, you get a set of agents that run each other. So the first level of orchestration is how do you organize the agents to organize agents? The second level is where do the humans fit in the picture? We cannot be there at every small decision. So we have to be running the orchestration. Context, you're going to hear about context engineering, context stacking. What context means is what does the model know when it's doing the work for you? We're going to hear a lot about grounded. So we know there are problems of searching things on the internet, but most of these tools now allow you to search your data files. All of that shell data we saw a few moments ago, that is believed to be true. That is grounded data. Increasingly, as market research wants to use the power of AI, we want to use grounded information, not just what's in the AI. We're going to hear stack from all sorts of structural and organization people, evaluation stack, so that you know how well your AI tools are working. How well is that synthetic data working? The tech stack, what are you using to make everything work? What is the platform? What's your different tools within it? And the research stack. And you saw a research stack in the presentation from Shell when you saw those different suppliers coming together. These are going to be the components that we create solutions from. And how many companies in the research stack are going to be new companies? Multimodal, we're going to see a lot more video in 2026. We're going to be able to process it. We're going to be able to create it in new ways. Here's a phrase you're going to hear, and I do not want you to use it. Doomers. Doomers is a pejorative term which is used to close your brain. The AI is an environmental disaster. It is transferring power to a tiny number of corporations in basically two parts of the world, China and the United States. There are all sorts of concerns, and we mustn't let the tech bros get away with just calling these doomers. We need to listen to those concerns. We're going to hear a lot about open source and open weight. This means that you can download that computer onto your device. You're going to hear about edge AI. That is going down onto smaller and smaller devices. There are a few mobile phones already that can run some very simple local models on them. That is going to increase. AI slop is my 10th word. I did some consulting on the options, and there were lots of good ones. But AI slop is all that text created by AI, all of those images created by AI, all of that fake news created by AI, all of those videos. And increasingly, we're going to find that the social media scanning, we're going to find that the collection of primary data, the creation of synthetic data, all of these things are going to have a problem differentiating between AI slop and real responses. So how do we survive the changes and thrive? Here's my tips for agencies. Build your moat. AI will not be a differentiator. Your data is a differentiator. Your knowledge, build that into your systems and don't share it. Your connectors are an important new word as well. But the way you put it together, that can be your moat that allows you to build the power of your agency. Be a mentor for your clients. So I am doing some projects already with agencies, helping them share information with their clients, run courses for their clients, help the clients evolve, become important. Focus on human-to-human connections. Get back into the habit of dropping around and seeing people in person rather than just on Zoom, because AI is not a differentiator. You need in your company 100% AI adoption, not 50%. That means creating easier ways for people to use it. The embedded tools are going to be much easier than asking people to use ChatGPT or Gemini itself. Reduce the change fatigue. Look at the workflows and make the changes under the hood where possible, so things simply happen the right way. Create pathways for new staff. Remember I said we've got to keep hiring people. So maybe AI moderated learning programs. So they have to do some hand coding. They have to do some hand data analysis. They have to do some qual moderation. And then they're marked on it. And they play it almost like a synth game on the AI. For clients, adopt SMR's 20 questions to make sure you're asking the right questions. Assume you can be the best utilizers of AI in your whole organization. Put yourself at the heart of what your organization is doing with AI. Be responsibly brave. You cannot wait until you're 100% sure before moving. It will be too late. Democratize the insights. I've stolen this from Tony Costello at Heineken. He is not democratizing access, he's democratizing the insights, which comes back to the old Levitt quote of people want holes, not drills. Indeed, ideally, people don't really want holes. They want shelves, they want coat hangers, they want all sorts of things like that. That's what we should be using AI to do when we democratize it. And for researchers, so adopt the questions That is the wrong one. Sorry, researchers. Be the AI expert in your team. Be the mentor, the innovator, the open mind. Be a driver, not a passenger. Never, ever send something that AI has produced. Always edit it. Always make it better. It is your intern. It is your servant. Prompt engineering is still going to matter, along with context engineering. Learn how to connect tools together. Learn about N88, learn about Zapier, all of these things. Develop your ability to spot the errors, the hallucinations, and the bias. Focus on outputs. Nobody is interested that you can use vibe coding or you can do custom agents. What they want to see is what you make. And develop your research thinking. A bit of a thank you here to Sue York, who developed that term. This is going to be critical to decide how you're going to use AI taking it forward. And I would suggest pick a podcast, one of the daily ones, one of the weekly ones that talks about AI, that talks about the changes, not a research one, something that talks about how it's being used in life and in business. You need a wider set of networks and inputs into your thinking. It's not going to be suitable just to be an expert in the research world. So there was one very early on about maybe I should use Gamma. I do use Gamma for some things. It wouldn't have stopped my Zoom problem. That wasn't a PowerPoint problem. Comment about Coloop. Yeah, with it, we do have a blog on the site somewhere about Coloop as well. I think it's a great product. How would you compare AI with a junior researcher? They share some of the problems in that they can be very bright. They can know a lot about something and then be really not knowledgeable and make a really strange mistake about somebody else. They are probably more sycophantic than any junior researcher I've ever used. So you need to use your prompt engineering skills to make sure that it will be critical of you. But it is like way faster. I mean, one of the really big reasons to be using AI is all about the speed. We've got a comment about it doesn't make very good coffee, and that is certainly true so far. So a comment using it, a very good intern, still ask great questions and layer on what I know. Absolutely. One of the interesting things, for example, when we ask AI to analyze some focus group transcripts, is it only analyzes what's in those transcripts. But you, as a human, know the last 30 projects you did with this client. And you have that in your mind when you're doing this processing. And that is something that we don't have yet with the AI. It is building this issue about building memory, building context, building connections, but it's going to be some time before it can challenge you at that. Okay, as a quality, this quality scale is still worrisome, not because I'm worried about our jobs. There's enough work to go around, but I think it doesn't help junior researchers learn how to think and explore nuance. I think you're absolutely right there. I think that the pathways to learning are something that we really need to focus on. We need new entrants into the industry to actually give a questionnaire to a human and see what they make of it. We need them to have a conversation with real people. Then we need to analyze them and help them work through. Some of that we can do with AI-based training, but some of it will still be around real people. Okay, I think one of the words for 2026 could be upskilling and training. Another popular term is unlearning. What do you need to unlearn when you start to redesign these processes? So in my course that I show how to use AI for quant, one of the things we do is we run a driver analysis. But then right at the end, we start to say, is that the right thing? Or should we have started off by finding out which of the many parts of the data could be giving us clues? We're going to it with a solution and a tool, but maybe it's not the right tool. It's a nice thank you there, which I don't need to read out loud. Do you think agencies will start using their grounded data, past data, and start making new offers and new products out of it? I think that is going to be a really key thing. So it depends which data they own, but you probably, if you're an agency, need to think really carefully about all of the screening stuff, the stuff that isn't client owned, the projects you did, but also everything that is known. You really need to capture what you collectively as business owners and business experts, and don't give that away. That is part of your moat. Yeah, so uploading relevant reports while analysis of transcripts. I always upload, for example, the conversations with the client in setting it up. I upload the proposal, I upload the brief. All of those things will help in getting a better analysis. The next generation of researchers, we really do need them so much. And that's the bottom of the list. So we can go over to Q&A tool. AI is increasingly used in survey design, data analytics, and even generating insights. Do you think the heavy reliance on AI is weakening human judgment in market research? Are we risking decisions driven by patterns rather than real understanding? I think it's weakening some people and strengthening others. If you are given a really good assistant and you give all the work to the assistant, you will get dumber over time. If, on the other hand, you give the work to the assistant and then you engage with the process and you direct the process, you will get smarter over time. And that is exactly the same with AI. You need to argue with it. You need to challenge it. You need, when you come up with the findings, ask the AI to give you 3 alternative explanations than yours. Whenever I'm asking AI to generate a survey design or a proposal, I'm asking it to generate 3 alternative ones, because if I ask it to generate one, it will normally generate the same one that I generate. But when I ask it to generate 3, it obliges me to think more than I would otherwise have done. So I'm now thinking more. I'm doing less typing, and I'm doing less typing because I'm using Whisperflow as well. So that's easier. But I'm doing definitely more thinking when I'm looking at these things. Would we maybe need to learn from non-MR companies on usage of AI? So technically, yes. I think that all of these areas about how do you automate processes, how do you connect strands and streams to make these tools work better. But fundamentally, I think we are the people who have the main advantages. I go back to a presentation about 18 months ago, Elaine Rodrigo from Reckitt's gave in, I think it was Singapore or Bangkok at the SMR conference. And she was talking about how they had a Shark's Tank type situation where they brought in innovative companies. In the UK, we would call it Dragon's Den. And they were all pitching their ideas. And they decided to let the regular market research companies pitch too. And they found most of the good solutions came from the regular market research companies, because the non-MR tech companies didn't actually understand our workflow. And if you don't understand what sort of questions we're answering, then it's unlikely you're going to give us answers that are going to be relevant to the problems we have. Yeah, so someone agreeing absolutely there. So something that's happened with, if you give all the work to your assistant, one thing that seems to have happened in some universities around the world is students have given all their assignments to AI, and they've ended up graduating a little bit less well educated than they arrived at university. There are precedents for this. Back in the rich days, rich students would pay clever poor students to do all of their work for them. They also ended up not learning anything at university and being a little bit less bright than they were at the start. This is exactly the same process. You have to use the AI in ways that will make you sharper and brighter, make you think differently. Okay, so if there are no further questions, we will call that a day. This is the last webinar of the year. We've had the less training course of the year too. So for those of you who celebrate any of the festive situations coming up, then please do have a good time with your family. You've got New Year coming up, different forms of New Year coming up as well. So be safe. Think about 2026 and how you are going to use AI to make your life better, to make you sharper, to make maybe the world a better place too. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your questions, and thank you for your support.